All right, get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into something pretty wild. We've got this audio file, and the title alone is a doozy. DNA analysis reveals Jesus' father not human. I mean, wow, talk about a bold statement. So we're going to break it all down, the science, the history, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's definitely an attention grabber. It's interesting, though, how they're trying to use science, DNA analysis on something like a biblical artifact. It really makes you think about how we view evidence and belief and even how we understand history.
For sure. So they start off by talking about this French scientist, Gaston Naessens, and his discovery of something called somatids, nasons. He created this special microscope, a dark field microscope that let him see things in blood that regular microscopes couldn't pick up. What's the deal with that?
Well, Naessens, he claimed that with his microscope, he found these tiny, incredibly tough particles, these somatids. And get this, he thought they were like the precursors to DNA, the very building blocks of life. And even more out there, he said they could change and evolve and that they were basically indestructible.
Okay, so we're talking about these microscopic particles, almost like little seeds of life that can withstand things that would normally destroy, biological material. That's pretty mind-blowing. But how do we get from these somatids to, the blood of Christ?
Well, that's where things take a turn. Now we've got Ron Wyatt entering the picture. He was a bit of a controversial figure. Wyatt claimed that he had discovered the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, the one that supposedly held the Ten Commandments. Super important in Judeo-Christian tradition.
Right. The Ark, a direct connection to God, or at least that's what many believe. So Wyatt says he found this incredibly important artifact, and then what? He finds a blood sample on it.
That's the claim. The person telling the story, they say they got their hands on a microscope like Naessens, and they were able to, through a connection with Wyatt's wife, Mary Nell, analyze this alleged blood sample from the Ark.
Wait, hold on. So they're saying this blood sample is from the actual Ark of the Covenant, and they use this special microscope to look for those somatids.
You got it. And according to them, they found thousands of these tiny particles. The story goes that Mary Nell Wyatt, when she saw this, she had a very powerful emotional reaction. She realized what they might be looking at. They believed it could be the blood of Christ.
Wow. I can only imagine. But how do they jump from finding these somatids to saying that Jesus didn't have a human father? What's the scientific explanation for that?
Well, this is where the DNA analysis comes in. They claim they analyzed this blood sample and found it was missing paternal chromosomes, except for one Y chromosome. Now, if this were true, it would mean, biologically speaking, it would be impossible. Conception without a human father.
Which, of course, lines up with the idea that Jesus was the Son of God, conceived through divine intervention. It sounds like they're saying, hey, look, the science backs up the Bible.
Exactly. And they take it even further. They tie this discovery to what happened during the crucifixion. Remember the earthquake that's described in the Bible, the one that happened right when Jesus died?
Yeah, of course. The earth shaking, the veil in the temple tearing into, pretty dramatic stuff.
Yeah.
What's the connection they're making with the earthquake?
Well, they say that the earthquake actually caused a crack in the rock right under where Jesus was crucified. And this crack, it led down to a chamber where the Ark of the Covenant was hidden. They claim it was through this crack that the blood and water from Jesus' side flowed down and landed on the Ark.
Okay, now wait a minute. They're saying the blood they analyzed, the blood with this unique DNA, this is the same blood and water that's talked about in the Bible, the blood and water that flowed from Jesus' side.
That's precisely what they're saying. They're saying that this blood sample on the Ark, it's physical proof of the crucifixion and proof of Jesus' divinity. So they're saying that this incredible event, the blood ending up on the Ark, wasn't just some random chance happening.
Right, because if we are supposed to buy into this story, there's got to be, like a logical chain of events, something connecting the crucifixion and the Ark.
Exactly. And they really emphasize the earthquake, the one described in the Gospel of Matthew, the one that happened right when Jesus died. They're saying that this wasn't just like a symbolic event. It was a real physical event that had some pretty specific consequences.
So, they're actually saying that the earthquake created a way for the blood to physically reach the Ark.
That's the theory. They claim that the earthquake caused a crack, this big fissure in the rock, and it started right beneath Golgotha, where the crucifixion took place, and it went down to this hidden chamber where the Ark was kept.
Wow, okay. I'm trying to picture this. Like, the ground is shaking, there's this huge crack opening up, and it just happens to lead straight to this incredibly holy relic.
It's a pretty dramatic image, right? And then they bring in the Gospel of John, the part where it talks about blood and water flowing from Jesus' side when the Roman soldier pierced him with the spear.
So they're saying that the blood and water, which obviously has, like, a huge theological significance in Christianity, they're saying it physically flowed down this earthquake crack and landed right on the Ark of the Covenant.
That's what they're claiming. And they even get into the actual mechanics of it. They suggest that the spear went through Jesus' spleen and maybe his heart, which would have caused a lot of blood to come out.
It's almost like they're trying to do some sort of forensic reconstruction of the scene.
Yeah.
They're using the biblical accounts,
Yeah.
Combined with some anatomical knowledge to try and make their case.
Yeah, and by doing that, they create this this physical connection between the crucifixion, the earthquake, and the blood being on the ark. It's definitely a compelling story, especially for people who believe the Bible is, a literal historical document.
But it does bring up some serious questions about how scientifically valid all of this is. Like, has anyone actually found this crack under Golgotha? What about this chamber where they say the ark was hidden? These are pretty extraordinary claims, and extraordinary claims usually need, extraordinary evidence.
You're absolutely right. That's why being critical and analyzing everything is so important. It's super interesting to think about all these ideas and how they're connected, but we always have to look at the evidence, think about other possible explanations, and, be aware of any potential biases.
Because, let's be real, this story, it really taps into some deeply held beliefs about Jesus, his divinity, and whether the Bible is literally true or not. It's easy to just get caught up in the narrative, especially if it confirms what we already believe.
That's such an important point. We need to be aware of our own biases when we're looking at information like this. Are we believing something just because it fits with our worldview, or are we really looking at it objectively? It's a tough thing to do, especially with something like this that's tied to faith and personal beliefs.
You're right. That's something we all need to keep in mind. So where does this audio go next? We've got the blood on the ark, the DNA stuff, the earthquake. What's the next part of this puzzle?
Well, from here, the story shifts a little bit to this idea of the blood and water being a testimony. They bring up some Bible passages that specifically mention the blood and water coming from Jesus' side, and they emphasize how important it is as proof that he was divine.
So it's not just a biological event. They're saying it has this deep spiritual meaning.
Exactly. They're arguing that the blood and water are like a physical, tangible manifestation of Jesus' sacrifice and his unique nature as the Son of God. And they connect this directly to the blood sample on the ark. They're saying it's a testament, a physical artifact that validates the biblical account.
It's like they're creating this grand unified theory. They're trying to weave together science, history, and faith into one big, coherent narrative. But, as we said before, it's a narrative that needs to be looked at carefully, with a critical eye.
Absolutely. It really makes us think about what evidence is, how faith and reason work together, and, the limits of what we understand scientifically right now. This is where the real deep dive starts. Not just looking at the facts they present, but thinking about the bigger questions they bring up about the world and our place in it.
I'm definitely hooked.
Yeah.
This audio is full of twists and turns. Let's head into the last part and see where all this leads. All right, so here we are, the final part of our deep dive. And this audio file, man, it's really taken us on a trip. Science, religion, history. It's like we're putting together this puzzle, but the pieces are all, I don't know, kind of weirdly shaped. It's definitely a puzzle, that's for sure. What I find interesting is how they use these things. We all know, like DNA, the Ark of the Covenant, and these stories from the Bible, but then they kind of twist them around and create a whole new way of looking at things.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we've all heard about the crucifixion, the blood and water, the earthquake, right? But this audio is saying, hey, all that's evidence of a miracle, a biological miracle, and it proves that Jesus was divine. And they don't stop there. They go on to say that this blood sample, this physical thing, it was meant to be found, like in our time now. They even bring up a passage from the Gospel of John, the one about the blood and water being a testimony. And they say it's like a message for people in the future.
So they think it's not just about proving something to the people who are actually there, but it's also about leaving behind proof for the rest of us, the people who came later.
That seems to be their point, yeah. And it makes you wonder about faith as evidence, like what if this blood sample with its unique DNA, what if scientists actually confirmed it was real? How would that change how people view religion? Would it make their faith stronger or would it challenge it?
That's a really good question. For some people, faith is all about believing without needing to see physical proof. It's about accepting things on a spiritual level. But for others, maybe they need to see evidence, something tangible, to support what they believe.
It's fascinating to think about how people would react to something like that. Would it bring people together, or would it cause more division? Would it make people question their beliefs, or would it just reinforce what they already think? It's hard to say for sure.
It feels like this audio file is like throwing a rock into a pond, and we're just watching the ripples go out in every direction. It really gets you thinking about the connection between science and religion, what it means to believe in something, and I guess what it means to be human.
That's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting, you know? It's not just about the specific things they're saying, but it's the big questions they make you ask and the conversations they start. It makes you question what you thought you knew and see things in a different way.
I gotta say, I'm walking away from this with a sense of, I don't know, wonder and a whole bunch of new questions. Like, what are the implications of all this? Where does science end and faith begin? And what does it all mean for how we understand the world and ourselves?
Those are really important questions, and I think they're worth thinking about. To everyone listening, I encourage you to keep digging into this topic. Do your own research, look at the evidence, and come to your own conclusions. This isn't the end of the journey, it's just the beginning.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. Until next time, keep those minds open and keep exploring.